Relations between South Africa and America are deteriorating. South Africa and democracies, and joins us from Washington, D.C. Max, thank you very much for your time. Some in South Africa feel that America is out to get us. Any truth in this?
I'd say that that's probably the wrong framing, that there's many in the United States, both within the administration and within Congress, that actually see South Africa as a party that the United States can and should be aligned with, and vice versa. I think many people in Washington actually see that moves by the ANC have pushed South Africa away from the United States, but it isn't necessarily too late to correct that.
Where do you think this correction should come from the part of the South Africans, or do you think it needs to come from the part of the Trump administration?
So right now, I think that the Trump administration and members of Congress that are focused on the issue of U.S.-South Africa bilateral relations are really interested in seeing momentum moving from South Africa and to correct its course of action by way of certain foreign policy choices in particular, as it relates to South Africa's growing alignment with the likes of China, Russia, Iran, and certain of Iran's terrorist proxies.
What do you think the South Africans would need to do to reverse this perception?
So, there's a lot of kind of low-hanging fruit, I think, with respect to symbolism that would be meaningful. There's a lot of growing ties between leadership at high-level delegations, trips to China, trips to Russia. It was just the other week that I have the quote here that South Africa's Minister of Defense said, "Iran's defense has strengthened the morale of freedom seekers worldwide. Iran's strength and resilience inspire all nations." It's that type of rhetoric that is actually damaging relations and creating a bad taste in the mouths of policymakers here in Washington as they think about the future of U.S.-South Africa relations.
Would the Trump administration be happier if South Africa let go of all relationships with the countries that you've mentioned?
If South Africa wanted to clearly and visibly move away from some of these malign adversarial nations, it would certainly be welcomed in the White House, and it would be certainly welcomed by members of Congress.
All right, let's talk about this bill. What brought about it, and where is it?
So right now, the U.S.-South Africa Bilateral Relations Review Act is a piece of legislation that was introduced. It just came out of the House Foreign Affairs Committee the other day. It was approved on a bipartisan basis, meaning that it had support of Republicans and Democrats. So procedurally, the next step is that the bill would have to be taken up by the entire House of Representatives. There would have to be a companion bill taken up in the Senate, and then eventually it would be signed by the president if it were to pass both houses.
In your opinion, do you think it's going to be passed and eventually signed by the president?
It's difficult to say. I think that if the bill went to the president's desk, he would certainly be interested in signing this piece of legislation. We see that since the beginning of President Trump's second term in office, since February, there have been increasing hostilities in terms of the U.S.-South Africa relationship. First, in February, there was an executive order which cut foreign assistance to South Africa. Then there was the expulsion of South Africa's ambassador. Soon after that, there were reports that the special envoy who was sent over actually had a visa denied. And when we look at aspects of trade, it's unclear as to whether the United States may support the AGOA trade bill. So for additional pressure points to push South Africa in the right direction, to the point that I said before about correcting its course of action, that would certainly be welcome. And as to the prospects of the bill actually passing and making its way to the president, it's unclear right now. There isn't a companion bill in the Senate. But it's certainly something that has the attention of many in Washington.
In your best case scenario, how long will this take before it gets to President Trump's desk? Best case scenario.
To be honest, I can't guess on that. The legislative schedule is something that is constantly changing here in Washington, and a lot of it has to do with dynamics related to other pieces of legislation that might be more significant for general operations of the U.S. government. So I unfortunately can't speak to that.
You did make the point that it's not just Republicans, but also Democrats that are supporting this. Generally speaking, do the Democrats and the Republicans in America think exactly the same when it comes to South Africa?
I wouldn't say that both parties see the issue exactly the same. During the House Foreign Affairs Committee markup, there was certainly disagreement about the bill from certain members of Congress. In particular, some Democrats had issues with respect to changing the nature of the U.S. South Africa relationship and instead of pursuing diplomacy and maybe moving towards support for sanctions. But as you can see from the vote count, there's clearly a resetting in terms of how both parties are looking at this bilateral relationship, and there is increasingly bipartisan support.
Max, thank you very much for your time as well as your insights. Max Meizlish is a senior researcher, a senior research analyst for the Center on Economic and Financial Power at the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies.